My husband has been dealing with some major issues. We have not yet figured out what it is. But he has been dealing with certain delusions. For example, it all started 6 months ago when he was convinced he had caught me cheating because he found a document saying so on my laptop. When I arrived home and he tried looking for it to show me, he obviously couldn't find it. He is going to therapy, but as of right now, we are technically separated and living in different rooms. It's just because this keeps happening. A certain insecurity eats itself into my husband, and he becomes convinced that it's the truth. He either dreams of proof or he just convinces himself that anything is proof. It's what he does with the therapist. But I honestly don't see it getting better. Last week, he was mad at our daughter, 15, because she didn't want him to drive her to prom and make pictures with her. When I went to ask her, she said that was not true. She had talked to her dad about what she would like to do when she graduates in 2 years. Her father just got really mad at the perceived sly. The problem is that he keeps talking to people about the issues. I was already wondering why so many mutuals stopped responding to me. But apparently, they all think I am an awful human being and terrible spouse. I just want to tell people what is going on. Also so they are aware that my husband is basically lying to them and for them to tell me delusions that he might be having that I don't know. But at the very beginning of his therapy, he begged me not to tell anyone because people would think he is crazy. My sister said that it would also be an asshole thing to do that would basically feed into his delusions. I just feel like I am done. Am I the jerk? Edit, we already did a brain scan/MRI, and nothing was found. Relevant comments. OP describes the delusions more. Obviously, I am not in the medical field. But I can't describe them as anything else. Mainly because we have not done any of the things he convinced himself of. For example, he was convinced our oldest daughter, 19, was pregnant because she said no to sushi. She was just not in the mood for raw fish. So my husband obviously became obsessed with the idea that our daughter was pregnant. He would go to full rants saying how dare she, we gave her everything, etc. Update 1. I thank everyone for their supportive words. Especially the people that have been through something similar. Thank you so much for sharing with me. It makes me feel less alone. Also, just because I have seen that a lot of people have not been able to read my first post. I have tried everything from getting him to a real psychologist to having him committed. I have tried with his doctor, with my MIL, and with my lawyer. But he has not broken the law or actually assaulted me. Just threatened to kill me and our daughter for being whores. But to the police, that does not matter because we don't matter. So please, all the suggestions you have and suggestions to get him committed or that he might have a tumor or dementia or schizophrenia. Please stop. I have no fight left in me. I also have no legal ground over him. I can't care anymore, or I will drive myself insane. He still has a support net. He will never be alone. But that man is dangerous to me and my daughters. And the duty of a parent is above all else. So again, please stop suggesting what he could have or what I should do regarding him, because that job is no longer mine. First off, thank you all for your feedback and support. I took some time to process everything, and honestly, I was at my breaking point. The situation has escalated in ways I never imagined, and I've made some tough decisions. After I posted, things started to unravel quickly. About 5 months ago, when my husband's behavior first started escalating, I quietly consulted with a lawyer here. At that time, his delusions had begun to affect our daily lives, and I knew I needed legal advice. The divorce process requires a period of legal separation before the divorce can be finalized. We initiated this process, and I requested full custody of our 15-year-old daughter, given her increasing fear of her father. The court was also concerned and ordered a psychological evaluation for my husband to assess his mental fitness for parenting. A few weeks into the legal separation, my husband's paranoia worsened. He started placing Apple AirTags in my car and in our 15-year-old daughter's backpack, tracking our every move. My daughter was the one who found the AirTag in her bag and was terrified. When I confronted him, he insisted it was for our safety, but it was clear to me that his paranoia was spiraling out of control. This incident deeply affected our daughter, who began refusing to see her father. Around this time, my mother-in-law reached out to me. She was concerned because my husband had accused her of cheating on his father, something that was completely out of character for him. FIL didn't believe it for a second but was deeply worried about his state of mind. Her reaching out was a small but much-needed relief. She acknowledged that his behavior was erratic and offered her support, knowing that something was seriously wrong. my older daughter, 19, had also become involved in the situation. She had been quietly documenting her father's behavior for months. She recorded 3 different occasions where my husband went on delusive rants. The first was about how I'm supposedly cheating on him with one of my coworkers, a man I barely interact with. The second was about how our 15-year-old daughter was secretly dating someone older and lying to him about it. The third was about how the entire family was conspiring against him to make him look crazy. Watching these videos was heartbreaking, but they validated everything I'd been dealing with privately. Things escalated further when my husband almost attacked one of my colleagues. He had convinced himself that this man was the affair partner I was supposedly seeing behind his back. It took all my strength to physically separate them before the situation turned violent. As the legal process continued, my lawyer informed me that due to the severity of the situation and the psychological evaluation ordered by the court, my request for full custody was strongly considered. In Spain, courts typically prioritize the well-being of the child, and given my husband's mental state and the danger he posed, it seemed likely that I would be granted full custody of our 15-year-old daughter. She had made it clear that she didn't want to see her father, and the court was taking her wishes into account. In the midst of this, my 19-year-old daughter decided to take matters into her own hands. She posted the 3 videos she had recorded of her father's breakdowns on Instagram, along with a compilation of texts, photos, and other evidence she had collected over the past few months. Her intention was to show the world what we had been enduring, but it quickly turned into a public spectacle. The backlash was intense. Some people were horrified and reached out with sympathy and support, while others criticized us for airing dirty laundry and accused my daughter of betraying her father. As the divorce process continued, my husband's mental health became a significant factor. The psychological evaluation ordered by the court revealed the depth of his delusions, particularly around cheating and female sexuality. It became clear that he was not fit to make decisions regarding our daughter's well-being. The evaluation supported my claim for full custody, and the court is now in the process of finalizing that decision. In the meantime, all communication between my husband and me is being handled through our lawyers, and I'm ensuring that any interaction between him and our 15-year-old daughter is supervised. Given the severity of the situation and the damage done to our lives, I'm making plans to move away with my daughter once the legal proceedings are finalized. My reputation in our current community is shattered, thanks to his delusions and the lies he has spread. Starting fresh somewhere new seems like the only way for us to heal and rebuild our lives. I never wanted it to come to this. I still care deeply for my husband, but I can't keep sacrificing our well-being for the sake of his image. The revelation that he's been lying to his therapist, or rather, his unqualified life coach, was a breaking point for me. I realized I couldn't trust him to get better on his own. Thankfully, some friends have started to see through his stories and are reaching out to support us, which gives me hope. But I know it's going to be a long, difficult road ahead. Update 1. I know it's been a minute since my last update, but trust me, things have gotten even crazier. Buckle up, because what happened next is beyond what I could have ever imagined. So, remember how I mentioned that we were waiting for the court to finalize the custody arrangement? Well, in a shocking twist, my husband decided to up the ante. A few days after my 19-year-old daughter posted those videos, he showed up at our house completely unannounced. Now, he's technically still allowed on the property, but since we're separated, we have an unspoken rule to stay out of each other's way. I was in the middle of packing some of my daughter's things because, at this point, we were ready to get out of here as soon as the court gave the green light. But when I heard the front door slam open, my heart nearly jumped out of my chest. I rushed to the living room, and there he was standing in the middle of the room with this wild look in his eyes, holding a stack of papers. I had no idea what was coming, but I knew it wasn't good. He starts waving these papers around, yelling about how he finally has the proof that I've been cheating on him. Mind you, I'm standing there in my sweats, holding a box of my daughter's old school projects, just trying to process what's happening. He shoves the papers in my face, and it's some nonsense printout of text messages that I've never seen in my life. He's yelling, pacing back and forth, talking about how he got them from a reliable source. I tried to stay calm and ask him where he got the messages, but he wasn't hearing any of it. He kept going on about how I've ruined our family and how he's going to expose me for the fraud I am. At this point, I realized this wasn't just another one of his delusions, it was something more intense, more dangerous. My older daughter heard the commotion and came downstairs, phone in hand, ready to record again if needed. But this time, it wasn't just about documenting his behavior. She was on the verge of calling the police because it was clear that things were spiraling out of control. I told her to wait, hoping that somehow I could defuse the situation before it got any worse. But then he did something that made my blood run cold. He suddenly stopped yelling, looked at both of us, and in the calmest voice, he said, "If you think you're going to take my daughters away from me, you've got another thing coming." Then he walked out of the house as quickly as he came in, slamming the door behind him. I was shaken, but there was no time to process. My daughter and I immediately packed up the rest of our things, and within hours, we were out of there. I called my lawyer, who arranged for us to stay in a safe place until we could get an emergency protection order. The court expedited the custody process, and as of now, I have full custody of my 15-year-old daughter. My 19-year-old has been a rock through all of this, but I can tell this is taking a toll on her too. As for my husband, he's been laying low, but I know he's still lurking. The last thing I heard from our mutual friends is that he's been trying to recruit people to his side, claiming that I've brainwashed our daughters against him. Honestly, I've stopped caring about what others think. My priority is keeping my daughters safe and trying to rebuild our lives. Update 2. First off, the emergency protection order came through, so legally, my husband can't come near me or our daughters. That should have been a relief, right? Well, it was until I found out that he's been trying to challenge it. His lawyer filed some paperwork claiming that I'm alienating him from his kids and that I'm the one manipulating the situation. I should have expected this, but it still caught me off guard. The court date for that is set for next month, so I'm bracing myself for another round of drama. But that's not even the craziest part. 2 nights ago, I got a call around 2 a.m. from a number I didn't recognize. Normally, I'd ignore it, but something told me to pick up. It was one of my husband's friends, the few who are still speaking to him. The guy was panicked, talking so fast I could barely understand him, but the gist of it was that my husband had been arrested. Apparently, he showed up at his friend's house in the middle of the night, ranting and raving about how he needed to fix things and make everything right. His friend, thinking he just needed to calm down, let him in. Big mistake. My husband started talking about how he had a plan to get our family back together. And when I say plan, I mean it in the most ominous way possible. His friend realized pretty quickly that this wasn't just another one of his delusions, this was serious. So, he called the police, and they managed to show up before anything worse could happen. I don't know all the details yet, but I do know that they found some disturbing things in his car. From what his friend told me, he had a bunch of printed out photos of me and our daughters, a list of addresses, and this is the part that makes me sick to my stomach, a couple of knives. The police took him in for questioning, and right now, he's being held on some serious charges. I don't know what his intentions were, but I don't want to find out. The weirdest part? He's still maintaining that he's doing all of this for the family. He's convinced that somehow, by going down this path, he'll fix everything. It's like he's trapped in his own twisted logic, and there's no breaking through. The lawyer has assured me that with these new developments, the chances of him getting any custody are basically zero, but honestly, I'm way past worrying about legal battles at this point. I'm just trying to keep us safe. We're still staying at the safe house, but now I've got this gnawing feeling that nowhere is truly safe. I've talked to my lawyer about potentially moving out of state, maybe even out of the country if things get too intense. My daughters are on board with whatever decision I make, but it's tearing me apart that this is their reality now. They should be focused on school, friends, and their futures, not living in fear of their own father. I also found out through the grapevine that my husband's mental state has deteriorated even further. His delusions have become more elaborate, and he's now convinced that there's some grand conspiracy against him, like, he actually believes that our entire neighborhood, the police, even his own family are all in on this plot to ruin his life. I can't even wrap my head around it anymore. But here's the kicker: despite everything, there's still a small part of me that feels guilty. I know it's irrational, but I can't shake it. I keep thinking about the man I married, the father of my children, and wondering how things went so horribly wrong. How did we get here? Update 3. So, here I am again, with another update that I never imagined I'd have to write. If I thought things couldn't spiral any further, life has proven me wrong yet again. At this point, it feels like I'm trapped in a never-ending nightmare, and I'm just waiting to wake up. Let's start with the fallout from my husband's arrest. The police held him for a few days, and during that time, I felt a small sense of relief, like maybe we'd finally caught a break. But of course, things weren't that simple. His lawyer managed to get him out on bail, which I didn't even think was possible given the circumstances. The court's decision was based on his mental health, with some kind of stipulation that he had to undergo immediate psychiatric treatment as a condition of his release. So, yeah, he's technically out, but they've got him in some sort of facility. It's supposed to be secure, but honestly, I don't trust anything at this point. And then came the news that hit me like a freight train. After my husband's arrest, I got a call from his sister, someone I've never been particularly close to. She was calling to warn me, saying that he'd contacted her and made some disturbing comments. Apparently, during one of their phone calls, he told her that he knew a way to fix everything, and that no one would see it coming. When she pressed him on what he meant, he just laughed and hung up. Naturally, I freaked out. I immediately called my lawyer and the police, but because he's in a psychiatric facility, they're saying there's not much they can do unless he makes a direct threat. They assured me that they're keeping an eye on him, but honestly, that's not very reassuring when you're the one living in constant fear. I started questioning everything. Is he planning something from inside that facility? Does he have people on the outside helping him? My mind went into overdrive, imagining all the worst-case scenarios. I've become paranoid myself, jumping at every shadow, second-guessing every decision. My daughters can see it, too, and I hate that they're having to live through this. We're all on edge, waiting for the next disaster to strike. But then, just when I thought I couldn't handle any more, I received a letter. It was hand-delivered to the safe house, which sent chills down my spine because no one is supposed to know where we are. I immediately called the police, and they took the letter as evidence, but not before I skimmed through it. It was from my husband. The contents were just as unsettling as you'd expect. He rambled about how he's found a clarity, and that he understands now what needs to be done. There were bizarre references to cleansing the family, and to starting fresh, like he's convinced that whatever he's planning is the right thing to do. The whole thing read like a manifesto from someone completely detached from reality. After that, the police ramped up their protection, but that did little to calm my nerves. My lawyer is working on a more permanent solution, and we're exploring every possible option, relocating under a new identity, moving to a different country, you name it. At this point, nothing feels too extreme. And yet, despite everything, life has to keep moving. My younger daughter is trying to focus on school, though she's a shell of who she used to be. She's become quiet, withdrawn, and every time the doorbell rings or the phone buzzes, she jumps. My older daughter, on the other hand, has turned into this fierce protector. She's taken on way more responsibility than any 19-year-old should have to bear, and I can see the toll it's taking on her. She hardly sleeps, and when she does, she has nightmares. Update 4. After my last update, things started moving at breakneck speed. The police presence around us increased, and my lawyer was pushing harder than ever for a resolution. But as the court date approached, I could feel the tension building, like something was about to snap. The day of the hearing came, and my nerves were shot. I barely slept the night before, imagining every possible outcome. But what I didn't expect. My husband didn't show up. At first, I thought it was just a delay. Maybe his lawyer was pulling some last-minute trick. But as the minutes ticked by, the courtroom remained empty. Then, mid-session, his lawyer stood up and announced that my husband had disappeared. He was gone. Vanished from the psychiatric facility sometime in the early morning hours. They had no idea where he was. The judge immediately halted proceedings and ordered an emergency alert. The police were called, the entire courtroom buzzing with panic. My heart sank. This was exactly what I'd been dreading. I rushed out of the courthouse with my daughters, the police escorting us back to the safe house. Every nerve in my body was on high alert, thinking that at any moment, he could show up, ready to enact whatever twisted plan he had in mind. We locked down the house, every door, every window, triple-checked. The police stationed outside told us to stay put and stay quiet. We were essentially trapped, waiting. And then, just when I thought I couldn't take the suspense anymore, the phone rang. It was one of the officers outside, telling us that they had found my husband. Only, it wasn't what I expected at all. Apparently, after leaving the facility, he'd driven out to the edge of town, to a remote spot we used to visit when we first got married. It was this old, abandoned lookout where we'd sometimes go to watch the sunset. That's where they found him, sitting alone in his car, holding that same stack of photos he had shown me weeks ago. But here's the twist: he wasn't there to hurt anyone. The police said he'd left a note, something about realizing that he was too far gone, that he couldn't fix things the way he thought he could. In a weird, twisted way, it seemed like he finally understood the damage he'd caused. Maybe the gravity of it all hit him, or maybe it was just one last illusion. I don't know. All I know is that when they found him, he was already gone. He took his own life. I didn't know how to feel when I got the news. There was no relief, no satisfaction, just emptiness. My daughters were stunned, and honestly, I think we're all still processing it. There's no happy ending here, just the reality of what happens when someone you love spirals out of control, dragging everyone down with them. In the days that followed, I went through the motions: funeral arrangements, legal paperwork, trying to piece together the shattered remains of our lives. The courts granted me full custody of my younger daughter, not that it even mattered anymore. We're free now, but at what cost?